He was a king in and out of the ring, but when the lights went out, what remained was a man surrounded by luxury, excess, and loneliness. This is the story of the Ali the world never saw. Muhammad Ali wasn't just the greatest boxer of all time. He was a symbol, a voice, a cultural icon who transcended borders. In the ring, he was pure poetry in motion. Outside, he was charisma, controversy, and glory. But there was also a side few knew, the man who dove headfirst into a lifestyle filled with luxury, shiny cars, immense mansions, and unforgettable parties. To the public, he was the embodiment of confidence and greatness. But deep down, Ali lived a constant contrast between the myth he had to uphold and the common man who still sought meaning amidst so much excess. The cameras showed his wide smile, his sharp turns of phrase, and the boldness of someone who feared nothing. But behind the scenes, dilemmas arose. How to balance overwhelming fame with the need to feel human. How to deal with the temptations that came with fortune. This is the journey we will take, from the ostentation that made the world revolve around him, to the moments when the silence of the night revealed the frailties of a man who, however legendary he was, also harbored doubts and desires. In this video, we'll open the doors to the mansions, take a closer look at the shiny cars, delve into the endless parties, and learn about the hobbies that kept Ali connected to life outside of boxing. Get ready, because the image you have of him will never be the same. Night was falling over Las Vegas, and from atop a floodlit mansion, the sound of music spread like a roar that echoed across the city. Inside, hundreds of guests milled about, amid champagne flutes, loud laughter, and camera flashes. At the center of it all was Muhammad Ali. He emerged, surrounded by applause, hugs, and glances that seemed to beg for his attention. He wore an impeccable suit studded with light-reflecting details, and smiled as if carrying the weight of the entire world on his shoulders, yet still had the energy to shine. His every gesture seemed rehearsed, every word a spark that ignited. "Those present, I'm the greatest. The rest are just here to confirm it," he shouted, eliciting laughter and shouts of approval. But as the music pulsated and the dancers moved to the rhythm of jazz mixed with modern beats, there was something in Ali's eyes that few noticed. The glow of victory mingled with the shadow of weariness. He walked around the room, greeting businessmen, kissing admirers, but inside, he seemed to measure each step as if knowing it was all costly, not just in money, but in soul. A close friend approached, trying to speak quietly. "Ali, you don't have to prove anything to anyone here. They already know who you are." He smiled, but replied dryly, "No, they need to see. They always need to see." In that setting, the sports cars parked at the entrance were almost as photographed as Ali himself. Ferraris, chrome Cadillacs, Rolls-Royces with white leather seats. Everything was an extension of his persona. It wasn't enough to be a champion. He had to appear unattainable. The jewelry sparkled on his fingers and neck, glinting under the artificial light. And with every toast, every impromptu speech, he reinforced an image constructed not only to impress, but to maintain the aura of invincibility. However, in the midst of the crowd, when the music dropped for a moment, small cracks appeared in the spectacle. There he looked around, and for a second he seemed alone, as if the crowd were merely a blurred reflection of his own greatness. It was in these moments that the silence struck him harder than any punch in the ring. Glory came at a price. The constant need to be larger than life, even when his heart only cried out for peace. And that night, surrounded by gold, lights, and applause, Muhammad Ali realized something he would never admit in public. The fight outside the ring was just beginning, and there was no adversary more relentless than the emptiness that awaited him when the parties ended. The automatic gate slowly opened, revealing a mansion that looked like something out of an American dream. The white columns mimicked Greek temples, and the stained-glass windows reflected the sun as if they held otherworldly secrets. Upon entering, the visitor was swallowed up by a polished marble hallway, with crystal chandeliers descending from the ceiling like cascades of light. There, he walked through that space with the same confidence he had when he stepped into the ring. But there was something different in the silence of the house. His voice echoed alone, without an audience. Without applause, the rooms were vast, with enormous silk-covered beds and walls decorated with photos of his most iconic fights. They were frozen images of the unbeatable warrior, but also memories that weighed heavily. "Look at this," he once said, pointing to a photo of him knocking out an opponent. The whole world applauded. But you know what happens when silence comes. "These walls remind me that I'm still just a man." The friend accompanying him remained silent, because there was no easy answer to that dot in the garage. A row of cars gleamed like metal trophies. There were exclusive models, some imported from Europe, others customized just for him. A rock with a gold interior, a fiery red Ferrari, a Cadillac that looked like a futuristic spaceship. Each vehicle represented a victory, a contract, a prize. But as he sat alone inside them, Ali admitted to himself that no engine could fill the emptiness of the long nights. The roar of the cars was intense, but it quickly faded, leaving him with the same silence as always. There he also had a room, dedicated to his jewelry. Diamond-studded watches, heavy gold chains, rings that glittered like stars set in metal. He showed them to his friends, uttered sharp phrases, and laughed out loud. If I'm a king, I must shine like one. But when he was alone, he would gaze at those pieces for minutes, almost motionless. Deep down, he seemed to wonder if the gold weighed more heavily on his body or his soul. It was in this contrast that Muhammad Ali lived, between the grandeur he built for the world to see and the simplicity his heart still sought. To many, he had it all. To him, something was still missing. This paradox haunted him every day inside that mansion that, however large, always seemed too small for the magnitude of the silence. And it's at this point that I need to ask you, viewer, do you feel this same tension? The contrast between what the world expects of you and who you truly are? If this story has touched you so far, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and comment what you think. Ali's journey goes far beyond luxury, and in the next chapter, you'll see how, away from the public eye, he sought refuge in passions and hobbies that revealed him in a completely different light. Far from the ring and the parties that lit up the Las Vegas nights, Muhammad Ali found refuge in small details that revealed a side he barely knew. It was in this silence that he returned to being just Cassius, the boy from Louisville who dreamed of changing the world with his own hands. In his backyard, surrounded by trees that hid part of his mansion, he spent hours tending to his horses. They don't judge me, they don't expect catchphrases, they just want me to be here, he would say as he stroked one of the animals' necks. In that moment, the champion seemed to forget the weight of the invisible crown he carried every day. Besides, Animals Ali was fascinated by magic. He enjoyed surprising friends and family with simple tricks performed using cards or coins. The invincible giant who could knock down rivals in seconds would transform into a smiling, almost childlike man when he made a dollar bill disappear before incredulous eyes. The secret of magic, he said, is the same as in boxing, making the impossible look easy. Amid laughter and applause, for a few minutes, he was no legend, but just a man enjoying the simplicity that luxury could never buy. His children recall that Ali also had a passion for drawing and writing. In notebooks kept in the mansion's study, there were doodles, poems, and loose phrases that seemed like intimate conversations with himself. I'm fast, I'm strong, but inside I'm still human, he wrote in large letters, almost as if to remind himself that, despite his greatness, there was vulnerability. These records were never made for the public, but they revealed the depth of a man who, even surrounded by excess, still sought meaning in every word. And then there were the solitary walks at dawn. While many were still asleep after nights of partying, Ali would walk slowly through the gardens, watching the sunrise. These were moments when no one called him a champion, nor expected a speech or provocation from him, just the sound of birds and the gentle breeze. In these moments, it seemed as if the man and the legend found peace, as if he accepted that being human was, after all, his greatest victory. But this serenity didn't last long. When he returned home, the phone rang, interviews rang, contracts knocked on his door. Life pulled him back into the spotlight, reminding him that the world always expected more, much more. And each time this happened, Ali realized that his hobbies and passions were like small islands in an ocean of demands, a necessary but always brief respite. And this is precisely where a new dilemma begins: how to maintain his essence amidst a fame that allowed him no rest. In the next chapter, we'll see how the weight of fortune, million-dollar contracts, and external pressures began to transform into invisible battles, perhaps even tougher than any fight in the ring. Dawn bit at the windows as the mansion emptied, and the silence revealed the numbers. On the table were contracts, receipts, diaries, clippings. No music, just the ticking sound that beat like a jab in the ear. Ali leaned in, his eyes burning. Each signature promised more brilliance and demanded more breath. There are 3 more campaigns waiting, said the businessman, leaning against the door. Cars, watches, an appearance tour. It's easy money. He took a deep breath, counted to 4 like in training, and looked at the man. Easy is what the public sees, he replied quietly. Inside, the ring was still set. bills mounting, family members asking for help, old friends reappearing with miraculous projects. Fame seemed like a prize, but it came wrapped in strings that tightened the chest. Outside, lights lit up, reminiscent of shifts for employees and drivers. Each smile cost salaries and taxes. The phone vibrated, magazines wanted covers, TV demanded attendance. And the gold, without an audience, seemed heavy. Only in the morning the house would wake up before him. The schedule arrived by email and voicemail: photoshoot at 9, press conference at 11, sponsor visit at 2, charity dinner at 8. The businessman spoke quickly. We need you to drive the new car in the video. The brand wants a close-up of the emblem. Then, watch on your left hand, smile for the cover. Easy, Ali nodded, but his eyes betrayed a short night. He'd tried to sleep, but his head was buzzing. Installments, deadlines, prizes, promises. When he closed his eyelids, numbers fell like rain. Are you okay? A friend asked. I'm the best, he replied automatically. I just don't know who holds the world together when I stopped. The sentence hung in the air, heavy. The advisor came in with a contract and a message. There's an exclusivity clause. If you refuse, we lose our bonuses and they'll open a dispute. He took another breath, counting to 4, as if gasping for air. The jet was waiting. 3 cities in 2 days, time zones jumbled, cameras. He lifted his chin, adjusted his smile, and finally when the hotel welcomed the procession of cameras like rain, flash, microphone, repeated question. He learned to change faces in the elevator, from tired man to unbeatable hero, from sigh to thunder. In the room, the window showed the city like a neon board. How much of me was left down there, he murmured. To his reflection, no one answered. Fame knocked on the door with shiny gloves and demanded silently, less sleep, more travel, more promises. The manager called. The sponsor wants an extra gift on the table. They say you're good at it. He laughed humorlessly. I'm good at winning. I learned the rest on the run. He hung up. The phone rang again, and the words sounded the same. Bonus, delivery, post, appearance. At some point, the applause had turned into invoices, and each yes trailed a no that no one saw. No to his family, to rest, to his own body asking for a truce. He opened a box of photos and saw smiles without an audience. Am I still here? He said to the boy in the portrait. The room fell silent. Upon returning, the room seemed smaller. The businessman brought new figures, bigger promises, a party with princes and stars. It's one night. Ollie, you go in, shine, and leave rich. He stared at the paper, listened to his pulse, and replied, not today. The silence was strange, almost offensive. What do you mean? No, the man retorted. Because today I need to remember my name without a microphone. The other side cited fines, recalled clauses, talked about image. He remained standing, firm and tired, as in the last robbery. The phone rang again. He let it ring. A friend approached. Are you afraid of disappointing the legend? Ollie closed his eyes for a second. I'm afraid of forgetting who I am. They turned off the lights in the room. The house breathed softly. For the first time in a long time, the noise stopped before him. In the darkness, he understood the message he had been avoiding. Luxury buys silence, but it does not buy peace. Tomorrow, when the doors open, the choice returns. Shine for the world or light up your own home. Just one salvo. Dawn crept in slowly, as if asking for permission, and he decided there would be no spotlights that day. The training room smelled of leather and history. His gloves rested on the bench like 2 hearts in pause. There he raised his empty hands, practiced light steps, listened to his own breathing, and the house responded with a rare silence. The phone blinked and was turned face down. He remembered the boy in the old mirror, the one running through the streets of Louisville gasping for air, and smiled for the first time without an audience. Today I choose to be simple, he said to the void. He leapt through the driverless garage, stopped at a modest cafe, and ordered eggs and black coffee. The waitress didn't ask for a photo. She asked if he'd slept well, enough to wake up better. He replied. He paid cash and left a note on the napkin. May life be light. Before leaving, he breathed for a count of 4, as in training. No flashes, only time. And time, in that moment, seemed finally on his side. Myth gave way to being only. Back at the mansion, he opened the windows and let the air in, as if inviting an old friend. He called the children into the garden, brought apples to the horses, and the laughter that arose had the temperature of home. He performed a magic trick, with coins, missed on purpose, and they laughed louder. He repeated it slowly, and the coin disappeared. The secret is attention, he said, blinking. Look at what shines and you miss what matters. In the office, he took some watches from the safe and set aside pieces for silent donation. He called a children's hospital and requested anonymity. It's not about my name, he explained. It's about reaching where the camera can't reach. A friend watched the scene, leaning against the doorframe. Are you going to trade gold for time? He smiled. Time is the only luxury you can't buy. As dusk fell, the lawn took on long shadows and the house seemed to breathe with him. On the porch, he told stories of the swift boy who chased the wind and told the children, if you ever get lost in the noise, follow the sound of your own heart. Listen. The next morning, the businessman arrived with new proposals, high figures, endless nights. There he listened unhurriedly, stirring his water glass like someone tuning an instrument. I need limits, he said. 2 days a week without cameras, training sessions without an audience, quiet hours. If I'm going to shine, let it be without fading. The man frowned, spoke of fines, reminders of contracts, the risk of cold headlines. He remained firm. I don't negotiate my peace. He signed fewer appearances, turned down a ball with crowns, accepted only what fit into his new life. He called the team and adjusted routes, swapped flights for short drives, exchanged private jets for sunrises. In the mirror, he whispered, to the boy from his past, I'm not the greatest when I forget to be a man. He took another 4-minute breath, put the phone in the drawer. In the hallway, he gathered everyone together and repeated, without health, there's no show. The message spread through the house like a good wind, closing more doors and opening windows to what mattered. That was it. As night fell, the city rekindled its neon lights, but the house remained in pleasant darkness. He sat on the porch, listening to the crickets and the distant laughter of children who didn't want to sleep. The luxury was still there, cars, jewelry, portraits. The difference was the owner. Now, each piece had a place, and no sparkle dominated the pulse. He took out a notebook and wrote slowly, like someone practicing a jab. Fame is the wind. Fortune is the tide. If I forget who I am, I drown. He closed the pen, looked up, and silently gave thanks for the minutes life had given him back. It wasn't the end of a movie. It was the beginning of a job. The job of remaining whole. There he understood that wealth without direction becomes a burden, and that the world applauds louder when the soul isn't on its knees. He got up, turned off the lights, and left only one on in the kitchen. Greatness, he thought, is fitting into oneself, and the rest, just noise. Tomorrow the voices will return. Answer silence, then choose. If asked for a creed, he will say, I can have everything. I will only keep what gives me peace now. Ultimately, Muhammad Ali's journey outside the ring shows us something greater than mansions, cars, and jewelry could buy. He discovered that the true struggle wasn't with an opponent, but within himself. Between luxury and silence, between applause and solitude, he realized that the greatest victory is to remain human, even when the world insists on turning him into a myth. This lesson hits us like a direct punch. There's no point in accumulating wealth if in the process, we lose our essence. Gold shines, but it's the heart that shines. And here's the point that touches us all. We live in an age where appearances are worth more than truth, where excess is sold as happiness. But Ali's story proves that greatness isn't measured by possessions, but by the ability to choose peace over noise, meaning over vanity. He reminds us that being the greatest isn't just about beating others, but also about overcoming the emptiness that tries to swallow us when the applause dies down. May this narrative serve as a mirror. May we seek more than numbers and perfect images. May we learn, like Ollie, to cherish the simple moments, to hear the laughter of children, to feel the wind of a silent morning. Because, in the end, it's not luxury that defines our story, but how we choose to live it. Remember, your greatest victory will not be what the world sees, but what you can sustain within yourself. And perhaps, like Ollie, your true greatness lies in something much simpler, the courage to be whole when everyone expects only a spectacle.